Good evening. You're watching the main news on ATV. I'm Hailing Chan.
And I'm Belinda Lloyd. Here are tonight's headlines.
U.S. Senate investigation finds American military aircraft flooded with fake parts from China.
Police escort government workers into Yunlong Park to dismantle illegal structures after villagers back down.
First commercial rocket launched to ferry supplies to International Space Station. A U.S. Senate investigation has found that more than 1 million counterfeit electronic parts from China are being used in American military aircraft.
Warning that American lives are at stake, it's blaming China as well as the U.S. supply chain.
Obviously, I can't read the Chinese, but...
Whatever anyone can make, China can fake. That might be the joke going around based on the vast array of counterfeit goods sold in China, from watches and phones to designer clothes and handbags. But when it comes to electronic parts used by the world's most powerful and technologically advanced military, the stakes are far higher and the implications much more serious. A year-long investigation by the influential U.S. Senate Armed Services Committees Carl Levin and John McCain has come up with some stunning findings. Their report estimates that more than 1 million counterfeit electronic parts made in China are being used in American military aircraft. They uncovered 1,800 cases of such fake parts in special operations helicopters, Navy surveillance planes, and the U.S. Air Force's biggest cargo aircraft, among others. The report pointed out that the failure of a single electronic part could endanger the lives of U.S. servicemen who rely on all kinds of small but sophisticated electronic components found in equipment such as night vision systems, radios, and GPS devices. The Senate committee laid the blame squarely on China's doorstep. It underscores China's failure to police the blatant market in counterfeit parts, a failure China should rectify, it said. Rather than acknowledging the problem and moving aggressively to shut down counterfeiters, the Chinese government has tried to avoid scrutiny. The report accused China of denying visas to Senate committee staff to travel to the mainland to investigate, with a Chinese embassy official apparently saying such a sensitive issue could damage Sino-US ties. The committee also blamed weaknesses in the American supply chain, noting that U.S. authorities and contract companies had routinely failed to detect fakes or report suspected counterfeiting to the military. It said the Defense Department did not know the scope and impact of fake parts on critical defense systems.
Local news now. Villagers have finally allowed government workers to enter a park in Yunlong and dismantle illegal structures.
While the villagers put up no resistance this time, they're insisting they're not giving in to government pressure. ATV's Joanne Wong reports.
More than 100 police officers, some in riot gear, were deployed to counter any resistance from militant villagers at the Tai Tong Lychee Valley Recreational Park this afternoon. They were there to protect government staff and contractors moving in to dismantle illegal structures. The Chinese characters for the name of the park were taken down one by one from the entrance, as villagers looked on without putting up the fierce resistance seen during the last couple of times government staff tried to go in. This entrance was one of the illegal structures and facilities sitting on government land for nearly 2 decades at the park. Compare today's atmosphere to yesterday's, when dozens of villagers refused to let anyone in. But the villagers backed down today. With his colleagues from the powerful Hung Yi-kuk accompanying him, park owner Leung Fuk-hyun explained that villagers were angry yesterday because the government did not clearly define the boundaries between public and private land before moving in to remove structures. He's now hoping the government will grant him land to put up the entrance arc elsewhere. Hung Yi-kuk chairman Lau Wong-fat said he was feeling unwell but still showed up. Speaking on his behalf, the vice chairman of the powerful rural body, Chung Hok-ming, stressed that the villagers have not given in to government pressure. He urged authorities to be sympathetic and reasonable while enforcing the law in such land disputes. At the same time, the cook urged villagers to stay calm and abide by the law. A contractor's truck was damaged yesterday during a dangerous attempt by villagers to stop the vehicle. Police are looking into possible criminal damage. Development Secretary Carrie Lam said she's relieved to see the latest turn of events at the park. She revealed that she spoke to her security counterpart Ambrose Lee about the dispute yesterday because it was also a challenge to police. And Lee pledged all necessary police support for the Lands Department to demolish any illegal structures on government land. Lam reiterated her determination to enforce the law. Zhuwen Wang, ATV News.
Civil servants are calling for an across-the-board pay rise of 5.8% for all government staff. The vice chairwoman of the Chinese Civil Servants Association, Li Kuai-yin, said this would boost morale. A government-appointed committee has already endorsed the findings of a survey of private sector pay, which suggested that civil servants should get a salary increase of 4.6 to 5.8%. The Executive Council will make a final decision. Angry protesters have been denouncing plans to raise public housing rents by 10% from September.
The Housing Authority says rents will have to go up, but it's looking at relief measures to offset the increase. Judging from these protests, the Housing Authority faces an uphill battle in raising public housing rents by 10% from September. Members of different political factions, including the pro-establishment DAB and the Democratic Party, gathered outside the Housing Authority's headquarters in Ho Man Tin, denouncing the proposed rent hike. They complained that raising rents by 10% would put a huge financial burden on public housing tenants and urged the authority to scrap it. Branding the Housing Authority as a bloodsucker, the League of Social Democrats took their protest a step further to make their point. The 10% figure is in keeping with the Housing Authority's rental adjustment mechanism, which could raise or cut rents based on changes in household income for tenants. The income index rose by 16.24%, but the maximum increase for public housing rents under this mechanism is capped at 10%. Despite the noisy protest, the rent hike will go ahead as planned. The chairman of the authority's Subsidised Housing Committee, Anthony Cheung, stressed there's no choice, as the housing ordinance requires rents to be adjusted according to the established mechanism.
But at the same time, many members have pointed to the possible impact of the rent increase on some households, particularly the grassroots. And of course, we pay attention to that impact. And some members have suggested that we should come up with some relief measures.
The Housing Authority will hold another meeting on Thursday to discuss possible relief measures.
A government-commissioned study has found a sharp rise in the number of women abusing drugs.
Experts are calling on the government to tackle mental health issues which are linked with drug abuse. ATV's Bo Leung reports.
People aged below 35 are more likely to be drug abusers. That's according to a survey conducted by the Hong Kong College of Psychiatrists and the Hospital Authority. In the past 2 years, 2,500 people were questioned about drugs and mental health issues. 4% of 1,670 respondents aged between 16 and 54 admitted that they took illegal drugs. Half of the drug abusers were aged 16 to 34, and a large proportion were young men without jobs. Nearly half of them used more than one type of drugs. The most popular drug was cannabis, followed by ketamine, ecstasy and amphetamine.
This is a very conservative estimate because many of those may not like to reveal that they have ever tried these drugs. So we want to call for the attention by the government that this is an important problem, probably much more important than we ever consider.
The survey found that 1 in 3 drug abusers are women, a higher figure than expected. This compared with 1 in 5 last year. The medical experts who conducted the study said the alarming figure should prompt the government to do more to help female addicts. The experts noted that drug abuse and emotional problems are often interrelated. They expressed concerns that people with mental health problems aren't getting the right treatment.
We also identified that only 25%, or roughly 1 in 4 of them, had ever sought treatment from professionals about their mood problems. That means a majority of them suffer from mood disorders without getting notice or even care by any kind of professionals, including medical professionals, social workers, or psychologists.
The study found that 6.5% of those interviewed were suffering from anxiety and 4.2% had depression. 2.4% were troubled by more than one type of mood disorder. Bo Leung, ATV News.
A privately owned capsule loaded with supplies is on its way to the International Space Station.
It's the first commercial flight to the station and is expected to take 2 days. ATV's Arthur Akila reports.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And launch of the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket as NASA turns to the private sector to resupply the International Space Station.
The rocket took off from Cape Canaveral Air Force Station.
First stage engines at full power, looking good.
It reached orbit 9 minutes later and released the Dragon freight capsule, carrying 500 kilos of food, water, and equipment. The Dragon is scheduled to rendezvous with the station, orbiting 390 kilometers above Earth on Thursday. And a day later, the astronauts in the station will use a robot handle to collect the supplies. The rocket is owned by Space Exploration Technologies, or SpaceX, founded by internet entrepreneur Elon Musk, a co-creator of PayPal.
And recognition confirmed.
There's a lot riding on the unmanned mission and its success. SpaceX is one of 4 firms trying to build space taxis to fly astronauts, tourists, and non-government researchers to the station. Another firm, Orbital Services Corp, already has contracts worth $3.5 billion to fly cargo with SpaceX to the station, while the American Space Agency, NASA, has contributed nearly $400 million to SpaceX's commercial space program. But it hasn't all been smooth sailing. The Falcon was originally scheduled to take off last Saturday, but the launch was scrapped at the last half second because of a high-pressure reading in one of the engines. Arthur Akila, ATV News.
Still to come on ATV's main news, 9 more people held in probe into gang fight in which policemen shot dead a man.
And hundreds rally in Yemen after 90 killed in suicide bombing claimed by Al-Qaeda group.
All the world is a stage. Play your part with pride. Live your life with no regrets. The greatest performances are only on Culture X. The last episode. Culture X, tonight at 10.
Run. Out of fear. Kill. To eliminate the weak kinds. There's no right or wrong. Just the raw nature. Saturday night at 9.
Be cool. Keep updated with the international music scene. Warner Music Power Station, Thursday night at 10.
He thinks that selling counterfeits and pirated goods is no big deal. He thinks that selling them over the internet is invisible. He thinks he can't be traced and that nothing can happen to him. The truth is, someone is always watching when a crime is committed. You're not smart enough to get away with it. Selling counterfeits and pirated goods over the internet is a serious crime.
Ancient Egypt, one of the oldest civilizations in the world. In the Musée du Louvre, its most amazing stories will be told in a beautiful way. All about documentary. Art Museums of the World, Monday night at 10. They eat. They breathe. They live. But none of these is possible without letting the toxicity kill themselves. Delhi Dump, Wednesday night at 9:35.
Julio Iglesias sold over 300 million records in his 44-year career. Double CD containing 38 hits in English and Spanish. Duets with superstar artists Sting, Diana Ross, Stevie Wonder, and many more. Julio Iglesias, one, available at Hong Kong Records.
9 more suspects have been arrested in connection with a gang fight that led to a policeman shooting and killing a man in Changsha Wan 11 days ago.
The suspects were found hiding on the roof of an industrial building in Sanpo Kong. Joanne Watt reports.
Police sprang into action early this morning, arresting 8 men and a woman in a raid on this industrial building in Sanpo Kong. Those taken away in handcuffs are between 19 and 49 years of age. They are believed to be the main suspects in Triad gang infighting, which led to a traffic policeman shooting and killing a man in Changsha Wan on the night of May 11th. The policemen have been trying to intervene when 5 men armed with knives attacked another man as he was leaving a restaurant with his friends. The officer claimed he opened fire to save the victim and to protect himself when one of the attackers came at him with a knife and ignored his warnings to stop. He shot the 36-year-old man, who later died in hospital. The other attackers fled the scene. Police Superintendent Yu Wai-leung said the suspects arrested this morning were hiding on the rooftop of Wongking Industrial Building on Tai Yao Street. All are locals and will be held overnight for questioning. The police raid caused a commotion in the industrial building. This woman who works there said management staff told her that police arrived at around 5 a.m. While she did not notice any unusual activity, she was worried about her safety. 7 other people, 6 men and a woman aged between 22 and 56, were questioned the day after the shooting and were released on bail. Police say investigations are continuing. Zhuben Wang, ATV News.
The government official tipped to become the new culture minister has responded to criticism that she has no expertise in the field.
But Deputy Home Affairs Chief Florence Hui is refusing to say if she's been offered the job. ATV's Edna Zhe reports.
Florence Ho is the second person tipped to head the proposed new Culture Bureau. During a radio program this morning, Ho, who's currently Deputy Home Affairs Secretary, refused to say if she'll accept the post of Culture Secretary if it's offered to her. But she responded indirectly to her critics, who say she has no experience in cultural policy making and has done little networking in the field.
The culture and art sector itself is fairly big and diverse. According to statistics, there are about 170,000 of individuals belonging to this sector. This is including the cultural and creative industries as well. And of course, no one single individual will be able to really get to know such a wide spectrum of people.
Ho outlined the qualities she believes the right person for the job should have.
A person with a diverse background, not only within the arts and cultural sector itself, together maybe with some private sector or management experience, might be able to assist him or her to better perform the role.
The early frontrunner for the post was the chief executive of the Institute of Contemporary Culture, Ada Wong. But the pro-Beijing DAB wasn't in favor of her because of her close ties with pro-democracy groups. Meanwhile, the head of the chief executive-elect's office has again rejected lawmakers' accusations that the public had not been consulted on setting up the new Culture Bureau. Fanny Luo told LegCo's Home Affairs panel meeting that Hong Kong's incoming leader Leung Chun-ying had held discussions with people in the cultural sector during his election campaign. Luo added that policies to develop culture can be discussed after the bureau is up and running. Edna Zhe, ATV News.
Lawmakers from different political camps have accused the government of not doing enough to help expectant mainland mothers who are married to Hong Kong permanent residents.
That's after the government said it will not set aside any public hospital beds for these mainland mothers to be next year.
It's been nearly a month since the government worked out a deal with 4 private hospitals to provide obstetric services for mainlanders with Hong Kong husbands. Up until the 13th of May, more than 200 of such expectant mothers have already booked places with these hospitals. That number is a lot higher than the government's original estimate of 70 within that same period of time. Lawmakers from different political camps are now asking the government whether it would be possible to allocate bed spaces in public hospitals for pregnant mainlanders with Hong Kong spouses. spouses. Lawmaker Leung Yu-chung expressed concerns that private hospital fees may be too steep for such women and argued they should be allowed to use public hospital facilities if they are married to Hong Kong permanent residents. However, Deputy Health Secretary Janice Dare ruled that out, saying public hospitals will not set aside spaces for them, as they need to meet the increasing demand for obstetric services from local women. Dare added that this practice will stay in place next year. This led to legislators criticising the government for not doing enough to help pregnant mainlanders with Hong Kong links. They also questioned the government's current practice of not allowing them to enter Hong Kong if they are at least 28 weeks into their pregnancy and have not had any antenatal checks in the city. Federation of Trade Unions legislator Wong Kwok King asked if officials could exercise discretion in those circumstances and branded the practice as discriminatory against these mothers-to-be. However, Dare defended the policy and stressed that if exemptions are made, this would create a policy loophole. She said public hospitals are already struggling to cope with demand for services from local pregnant women, and allowing flexibility on this rule will only add to the strain on resources.
Overseas again, an al-Qaeda branch in Yemen has claimed responsibility for a suicide bombing yesterday that killed more than 90 soldiers and wounded hundreds more.
The militant group has threatened more attacks if a US-backed campaign against insurgents in the country doesn't stop. Hundreds of people rallied in Yemen's capital on the night of the country's deadliest attack since a new government took power in February. They want the violence to end after a suicide bomber targeted a military parade rehearsal yesterday, killing at least 90 troops and injuring more than 200 others. Investigators say a rogue soldier had strapped explosives to himself under his army uniform before detonating them, catching his colleagues completely off guard. Officials insist the attack wasn't carried out by a man in disguise. Ansar al-Sharia has claimed responsibility for the bombing. The militant group is an offshoot of al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, which formed the movement in response to growing unrest and anti-government sentiment in Yemen. The organization has threatened more attacks if a US-backed campaign against militants in the country doesn't end.
We are very concerned about al-Qaeda activity and extremist activity in Yemen.
But Washington is refusing to back down in its fight against al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. It believes AQAP is a major front for the organization's global operations, including terror attacks in the U.S.
We're going to continue to work with the Yemeni government to try to identify AQAP leadership and operations and try to thwart them. That's important for U.S. safety. It's also important for the stability of Yemen and for the region.
The United Nations Security Council has condemned the bombing in the strongest terms. In a statement, it called the attack a heinous act and promised to combat all forms of terrorism. The World Body's Secretary General has urged Yemenis to support February's political transition, in which a new government took office with a promise to stamp out insurgency. In response to the bombing, the country's new president, Abdrabbuh Mansour Hadi, has sacked 2 senior commanders who are allies of his predecessor. He's promised to oust militants in Yemen's mostly lawless southern regions as the nation moves towards democracy.
Time now for sports with Joanne Wong.
So Joanne, what's been happening in tennis?
The king of clay has done it again. Rafael Nadal has won a record 6th Italian Open title after beating world number 1 Novak Djokovic in straight sets. ATV's Corinna Wu reports.
Rain delayed the final of the Italian Open in Rome by a day, but the postponement appeared to have worked in Rafael Nadal's favor. The Spaniard was at his best against Serb Novak Djokovic, the world number 1 in the opening set. Nadal kept up the momentum to take the set 7-5. Djokovic tried to break his opponent's domination in the second set, but Nadal fought on, delighting the spectators. The King of Clay took the second set 6-3 to win the Italian Open title for a record 6th time.
I had to be very focused with myself all the time. His return, is unbelievable, and
I suffered a lot in every serve, but I was very, very focused.
The victory makes Nadal world number 2 again, but it's also a major confidence booster as he begins the defense of his French Open title in a few days' time. Corinna Wu, ATV News.
Finally, the Olympics, sports and music made the perfect duet as the torch relay continued across Britain. Here's Corinna Wu.
The Olympic flame is attracting enthusiastic crowds as it slowly winds its way across Britain. There's as much interest in the relay as in the torchbearers themselves. In the town of Taunton, there was a touch of glamour as the American singer who calls himself will.i.am took part. The Black Eyed Peas singer was cheered by fans as he began jogging, holding the torch aloft in one hand and his mobile phone in the other. It was a dream come true for the celebrity who did a brief moonwalk in honor of the late Michael Jackson.
You know, I remember 1984, the Olympics in Los Angeles, and me being a little Will, watching it on TV, right? Wishing I could be at the Olympic Games, and I had that flashback, you know, when they handed me the torch to run through Taunton. So it's like a blessed moment and a surreal moment and a can't believe it moment all at the same time.
will.i.am was the 109th runner. In all, 8,000 people will have carried the torch before the flame reaches the Olympic Stadium in London for the Games opening ceremony on the 27th of July. Corinna Wu, ATV News.
And that's our main news for Tuesday night. We'll have an update for you in 1 hour. I'm Belinda Lloyd.
I'm Joanne Wong. And I'm Hailing Chan. The weather report is next. Thanks for watching ATV. Good night.
Good night.
Taste versus health. In this battle, nobody will go down without a fight.
Surprisingly, I would rather cook this way for my health and for my friends' health.
Leisure Time. Healthy gourmet. Tonight at 8:30. Life is only worth living with good food.
The world's finest are here. Celebrating the arrival of fabulous summer in the city of music. Music is in the air. Vienna Philharmonic Summer Night Concert 2011. Wednesday night at 8.
How badly did they want to live? How hard did they fight for it? Only the survivors get to tell the stories. Seconds from disaster. Plane crash in the Potomac. Saturday night at 10. It's all over? Think again. Here comes the next gourmet challenge. The Boston Combo. Leisure Time. Man versus food. Monday night at 8:30.
Hot topics of our time. Key issues of the day. Different perspectives and comprehensive views. Newsline, the forum, the discussion. Sunday night at 8.
Questions asked.
How many people did you kill to make your drugs?
Might not be problem solved.
You do know I have diplomatic immunity.
Follow your heart where the truth lies. Mega Hit 900. CSI New York. Thursday night at 9.
Welcome back. Just a quick recap of today's weather, which was sunny and fine. Temperatures ranged between 24.3 and 27.6 degrees, and the relative humidity varied from 65 to 81%. Winds were fresh coming in from the east. Checking on the ultraviolet reading, the maximum recorded for the day was 9. And tomorrow's UV levels will be about 10. Here's a look at the weather around the region. An area of high pressure is bringing a dry airstream to southeastern China. And moving on to the satellite images. Unsettled weather associated with an area of low pressure is affecting the northern part of the South China Sea. And here's what we can expect over the next few days.
Sunny periods tomorrow. Temperatures will range from 25 to 29 degrees. Sunny periods with rain on Thursday, with the mercury hitting a high of 30 degrees. Cloudy with occasional rain and sunny intervals for the rest of the week, reaching a top temperature of 30 degrees. Let's see how polluted it will be tomorrow. General stations will be medium to high at 30 to 60, and roadside pollution levels will be high at 60 to 95. Finally, here's a look at the weather around the world. Thanks for joining us for the weather, and have a wonderful evening.
Coming up, check in current news. In Focus.
Love is the greatest flaw of humans.
The most powerful weapon on Earth is invisible, unpredictable.
I don't think he's really your dad. You lied.
And no trace will be left behind. Mega Hit 900 V, tonight at 9.
Chosen as one of China's top 10 happiest cities. Guizhou is the ultimate paradise for fun-loving travelers. Leisure Time, Tourism Administration of Guangdong Province Special. Ramble around the southern Guangdong Green Path, Thursday night at 8:30.
1 + 1 does not equal 2. Timing and strategic planning are everything to successful mergers and takeovers. And the chief executive of one of Asia's leading healthcare companies insists family does not always come first. Documentary World, Asia's business leaders. Sunday night at 9.
What happens out there is real. Get the latest European news and current affairs. Whatever happens, when it happens.